my live dance, doing my live dance. Am I live? All right, I think I'm live. Hello, everybody. HP Hollow here, back with you tonight to read Chapter 2 of Monster Punk Horizon, which, by the way, because I have to say, it is currently available on Amazon, on Kindle Unlimited, in print, and very soon will be available in audio. I just listened to the semi-final files tonight and had to send in like 2 edits, which should be fixed very, very quickly. And then hopefully I'll have it approved and whatnot this weekend, and it'll be ready for your listening pleasure. So, also, as I was flipping through tonight's chapter, I realized that chapter 2 is itty bitty. And so I am actually going to read 2 chapters tonight. So if you'll give me a few moments after the end of chapter 2, I'm going to finish this video and then start up chapter 3 and another one so that it's easily searchable. So just hang on with me wherever you're watching, and we will get a whole load of entertainment tonight. So without further ado, chapter 2 of Monster Punk Horizon. Chapter 2, The Pirates of the Dazzling Skies. Rips of deep black tore across the sparkling daytime stars like massive claws ripping through the cloth of the universe. But they were used to that by now. The hunters on the shoreline scrambled for their mounts and shot into the dazzling skies. The dazzling skies were so called because they shone even during the height of day with what looked like a whole galaxy of stars, gleaming through the bright purple blue of the atmosphere like the luster of the most dazzling jewel. In actuality, they were not stars, but portals to other worlds, too high to reach by hunter means, but high enough to drop random stuff out of the sky in spectacular fashion. "Change of plans," Hati shouted. At once, she and Tree bolted to the shore and one of several wyveraries planted there. Riding wyverns of all sorts burst from the open roofs in blasts of feathers and leathery wings, all saddled with a begoggled rider who flew as if they'd been waiting for this exact moment, which, judging by the plates abandoned at the little lounge outside, they had. Those who hadn't now bottlenecked at the door, jamming the entry as the early birds swooped down in a cacophony of screeches and jeers. The noises all blended together into a general unintelligible discord of insults, but the loss didn't matter. The insults invigorated the late hunters. Hati launched over the bottleneck as only a cat person could. Trey simply barreled through as only a living battering ram could, and soon both found their mounts, 2 green, broad-winged albateals, already saddled by the wyverary attendants. Tree leapt onto his, Hati onto hers, and both latched themselves in before yanking their own goggles over their eyes and unfurling the short red banner of a savage, fire-breathing pig with an eye patch. "Dragon Pig Pirates are go!" Hati shouted, and with a glorious fist bump, she and Tree launched into the riotous sky. A more accurate name, perhaps, would have been the Dragon Pig Salvagers, but it didn't have the same glamorous ring as pirates, and besides, the original was not entirely inaccurate. It took some time for the loot to fall to heights the wyverns could handle, and in the meantime, the riders cartwheeled through the sky like a swarm of ravenous berserker seabirds hell-bent for their first glance of sky snacks. They used anything they could to distract the other riders from bagging their quarry, firing smoke bombs, flash bombs, stink bombs, and the like. The wind this high was such that they couldn't shout insults without the air dashing the sound to oblivion, but they were resourceful hunters, and they'd found their alternative. Hati and Tree wove and plunged around skyborne obstacles on wyverns chosen for precisely that purpose. Albateals had wingspans that could ride hurricane winds for the fun of it, but could compress those wings against a long, streamlined body to spear fish from heights that fish couldn't comprehend, at speeds they could comprehend even less, which made them perfect for diving at fellow salvagers, but also loot. Hati spotted the first speck of treasure as it descended and adjusted her goggles for a better look. The lenses telescoped to reveal a chunk of earth, followed by a literal pile of trash. But this wasn't just any trash. It was sky trash, and that gave it worth beyond value. There was no consistency to what fell from the sky. Often it was people or other life forms, which accounted for much of the population under the dazzling skies. But just as often, it was random, alien objects of wildly unknown use. Nonetheless, the inconsistent deliveries fueled a raging skyfound market. People across the continents were willing to barter outrageous sums of gems for things simply because they fell from the sky, often out of curiosity alone, which meant that this trash was Hati's trash, and screw anyone who got in her way. She, she shot a red smoke bomb to alert Tree to the incoming haul, but an infinitesimal moment later, a purple bomb burst next to it, and a flock of purple-bannered wyverns shot up and netted both catches. Skydam waspas, that was ours, Hati yelled into the wind, and though the waspas couldn't hear her, they could certainly see the gesture she sent, and returned it as a smug, unified whole as they drifted down past her victorious. Well, Hati had a whole pouch of stink bombs specifically for that purpose. She unlatched her pod launcher from her saddle, a simple combination of a high-tension slingshot and a rifle, not lethal enough to harm, but definitely strong enough to piss off, which was exactly what she'd intended it for. But then another red pod exploded above her. Tree had fired, and whatever was falling now was moving. Ugh, Hati groaned. But they had to go for this one. Harbor rules. Living beings took precedence over loot. Hati nudged her mount with her heel and pulled it up. With any luck, it wouldn't be too sentient. Maybe a livestock animal or a toy pet. That way she could at least barter it for some gems. But as she rose higher, she began to realize that this creature was no toy. It wasn't even livestock. Her wyvern faltered, the air beginning to thin beyond its comfort. The creature above was still falling, and it was enormous. No one in the sky saw more than that. That boy's been eating his veggies, Pix observed from the shore. The creature tumbled end over end in the manner of one who had suddenly found the terra firma beneath its feet not so firm after all. Its long black limbs thrashed as it tried to right itself in the air. It fell so fast they couldn't see how many limbs or what kind. Some flailed with solidity, others with whip-like motions like tentacles or antennae. But regardless, they could see sharp, fierce-looking horns sprouting from every other surface, and creatures didn't grow those unless they had a use for them. You don't get that big by eating veggies, Jaz observed darkly. Factually incorrect, but I know what you mean, Pix replied. That was when the creature found its bearings. Two gigantic leathery wings snapped out from its back, throttling a massive gust of wind into the scrambled salvagers and knocking them about like butterflies on a blustery day. The riders may as well have been butterflies, as small as they were in comparison. From this distance, Pix and Jaz guessed that the monster stood 4 stories tall, with a wingspan twice, maybe 3 times that size, rendering it incomprehensible to the wyverns flying so close to it. They swarmed around the creature, muddling its view as they tried to regain their own bearings, but they were never able to. The creature reared back in the air and unleashed a noise unlike any the hunters or their wyverns had heard before. It sounded like the combined summer screeches of every insect on the entire monstrous continent. Shrill, ear-splitting, and consciousness-wrecking, and overlaid on a deep, primal, guttural bellow that curdled the guts of every hunter who heard it. It was like hearing 2 monsters effing and fighting at the same time. I'm reading the edited version. And it knocked the wyverns right out of the sky. Earworms, Jaz cried, as she whipped 2 of said creature from a jar in her kit and slipped one onto the crest of each ear. The thin, hand-length worm curled its back around her ear like it was a decoration before plunging its head into the ear canal, fully blocking off sound from the outside, but also filling her head with a strange awareness that only happened in symbiosis with an earworm. Hey, Doug, I just saw your comment. That wasn't just a roar. That was a sonic attack, Pix exclaimed. The worms in her own ears glowed with each syllable, transmitting the words directly to Jaz's brain. Well, let's not jump to conclusions, Jaz said. Could be in a metal band where he's from. Indeed, the creature didn't look very interested in attacking the buffet it had laid out for itself. Color-coded parachutes blossomed over the wyverns as the hunters came to their senses and triggered them, but the beast ignored the now immobile flyers. Instead, it beat its wings in another massive gust, scattered the parachuting pirates like fallen leaves, and plunged toward the nearest land it could perceive, the dense jungle just outside the bounds of the harbor. Jungle that was dense enough to swallow it completely. The earworms permitted noise through their selective filter. Behind the huge skulls that gave the harbor its name, The Catayant attendants scurried to pump air through an equivalently massive set of bellows. The bellows rushed air through the chambers of the skulls and blew out a pattern of monster calls like the music of a great morbid calliope, and now the hunters on the ground scrambled for their kits and mounts. They all knew the message of that pattern. Looks like we found our good posting, Jaz grinned, and sprinted off toward the forest. And that is the end of chapter 2. Thank you for watching. But like I said, this chapter is itty bitty, so I'm going to move up the reading of chapter 3 to a few minutes from now. So give me a few minutes to get my video set up in a different video so it's easier to access. And I will see you again in a few seconds. So bye and thanks for listening.